Welcome back, everyone. For today's video, we are going to be taking a look at the third and final day of the Chess 9LX event being held here in St. Louis, Missouri. Now, going into the final day, I'm having a pretty good result so far. I have 4.5 points out of 6, a half point behind Fabiano Caruana, who is leading with 5 points out of 6. So going to the final day, 3 rounds left, half point out of first place, and let's jump right into the action. So in the 7th round of the event, the first game of the day, I'm playing with the black pieces against my countryman, Ray Robson. Now, Ray has struggled recently. He didn't have a great US championship, not having a good event here in the 9LX, and I'm really looking to try and pounce and move up the leaderboard and try to catch Fabiano. So first game of the day, black pieces, obviously this is Fischer random. All the pieces are rearranged on the back row in a different order than we're used to. So the game starts with the move G3 from Ray. He's trying to open up the scope and win this pawn on B7. Say I play a normal centralizing move like pawn to E5, trying to build a big black center. After bishop takes B7 is already spaghetti-o time, as I'm going to lose this trapped rook in the corner. So I play knight to C6, stopping white from winning the pawn on B7, and now Ray plays move C4. Now, what's really amazing about Fischer random chess is on move number 2, my opponent has made a mistake. Now, in a normal game of chess, top grandmasters would never blunder this early in the game. It's literally impossible to blunder on move 2, but due to the nature and the arrangement of the pieces, it can happen in such positions. So Ray plays C4, I go G6 here, opening up my own diagonal. Here he plays knight C3, and now I play the move F5, threatening to win the pawn on C4. Ray goes D3, guarding the pawn, and now I play the move E5. Now, one thing I want to point out about this event, which I have mentioned in the previous video, specifically yesterday's video, is I was really lucky that in this event, I was working together with Garry Kasparov, one of the greatest players of all time in terms of analyzing before the games. Now, the reason I bring this up is that Gary's intuition is second to none. There is a reason he's considered to be the beast from Baku, and his general thoughts about this position were that black is already better. So when Gary and I were analyzing, the great thing is he was usually playing in the round with white pieces, like in this first round, and I had the black pieces. And Gary and I analyzed the position, and Gary said, black's just better here. Bishop on G1 is bad. Of course, obviously, everybody should understand it. Just look at the pieces on the board. It's clearly better for black. So Gary thought this was better, and that's why we actually went in a different direction. We thought that C4 was an inaccuracy, or that this position after F5 and E5 was good for black, and we thought that white should play differently. So I followed Gary's recommendation. I played the setup with F5 and E5, and here Ray plays a surprising move bishop to D5. Now, this is a move that I actually like conceptually, because if white were to play F3 here, opening up the scope for this B, now the B on H1 is actually walled in by the pawn on F3. So Ray goes bishop D5, and here I play the move bishop E6. Of course, the 3500 level computer suggests a move that I didn't even consider, which is knight to E7 takes, and then knight takes G8, because apparently here, when I set up the fianchetto with the bishop on G7 and the knight on F6, this is great for black. Don't ask me why. I honestly don't understand, even now looking at the evaluation, but the computer thinks that this is the correct way to play. So instead, I go bishop to E6, paying homage to Pia Cramley, who played earlier today against Levi Rosman in Stockholm, where I'm happy to get doubled pawns on the E file. So Ray here decides to play F3. Now that he's developed this light square B, he can open up the scope, and this bishop on D5, it's a classic wooden shield here. It's guarded by the pawn and the knight in this position. So you've got your wooden shield on D5. Now you open up the scope for the other B, and black actually has to be a little bit careful here, because now my bishop on H8 is walled in by this pawn on E5. So I decide to castle. Ray plays move knight to B3, and now I play the move B6. The reasoning behind this move is to blunt the force of this knight on B3. Now the knight simply has no squares to jump to on D4, C5, or the A5 square. So now the knight on B3 is a little bit misplaced, and here Ray plays the move E4. Now Ray actually should have played the move D4, striking in the center right away. This is a move that's a little bit counterintuitive, because after knight to D6, it looks like I've got D's knights in the center, targeting the pawns on D4 and C4, and the position is very complex. So Ray instead plays E4 here. Now, of course, we have our classic wooden shield with the bishop on D5, as well as having a classic diamond hands formation with the diamond triangle in the middle of the board. So after E4, I play knight to D6 here. Ray goes queen D2, trying to castle his king out of the center of the board. And now I play the move A5, launching on the queen side. Now, this is a very annoying move to deal with from the white side, because his knight on B3 is very uncomfortable here. I'm threatening to play A4. Let's just say you play a move like bishop F2. After A4, the knight still has no squares on D4 or C5 here. And now the knight will have to retreat back to C1. So Ray decides to play the move A4. This is a move that I was actually very surprised by during the game, because it's creating a Swiss cheese hole on B4 for the knight, where I can get a nice bastion and continue to put pressure on Ray's position. So I go rook b8, Ray castles, now I play knight b4. Of course I move the rook so I wouldn't be sacking the rook on the a8 square in this position. Now here I've got a bash, I've got the knight that's hooked with the pawn chain. I'm always targeting the pawn on d3 and the bishop on d5. And at this point in the game, I actually felt really comfortable and I thought I was in great shape and I might have chances to win. So Ray plays queen to e2 here. Again, Ray could trade the bishop on e6, but after takes, let's just say white goes king b1 and I go c5. You'll notice his pawn on d3 is very, very weak here. You can't push it forward. And let's just say we get a couple of moves here. If I can put this rook on d7 and a knight on b7, suddenly this pawn is a permanent weakness. So Ray plays queen e2, now I go queen to e7, Ray plays g4, and this is the start of where things fall apart. Now, as you'll notice, Ray is already down almost 5 minutes on the clock. It's a very tough spot to be in because if white can't play f4, d4 here, you're forced to kind of sit and make a decision which you really don't want to have to make. So Ray goes g4. Here I play bishop takes bishop, he takes with the e pawn, and now I play the move rook b to e8. Now the reason I move my rook away from the b file here is that the rook on the f file is very well placed to create pressure. Maybe this file is going to open at some point, but the rook on b8 simply doesn't serve a purpose on this file. Let's just say white plays, or actually let's just say it's black's move. Maybe at some point I can try to go for c6 and b5 potentially, but it's going to be very, very hard to open up the b file, whereas when I play rook to e8, now I have the rook on the f file and I'm preparing to potentially play e4, opening up the scope for the bishop and the e file as well. So Ray takes on f5, and here I take with the knight. In this position, I could maybe take with the pawn to stop white from putting the knight here, but now the g file is open and my king can become quite weak. So I take with a knight, Ray goes knight e4, and now I play this move d6, creating the classic flying triangle formation here. You have the pawns from c7 to a5 and c7 to e5 here, the flying v, and I can also play for queen d7 to hit the pawn on a4. Say white goes h3, queen d7, suddenly this pawn on a4 is super weak. So Ray goes knight a1, I play queen d7, now he goes b3, guarding the pawn on the a4 square, and here I play the move c6, trying to open up the center of the board. Now Ray's pieces are so passively placed here, the pawn on f3 can't ever move, because then you open up the long diagonal, you can't go d4 because that just hangs the pawn, and so if I can force open the center of the board here, or the queen side, bad things are going to happen to the player with the white pieces. So Ray takes. I take back with the queen, he goes king b1, and now I play the move d5, Ray takes, and here I take back with the knight. And now you'll notice that D's knights are very, very active. There are a lot of squares here available. There's a square on e3, there's a square on f4, a square on d4, also a square on c3 potentially as well. So with all these squares for D's knights, it becomes very hard to play. And to make matters worse, Ray is also down a minute on the clock. So Ray goes rook c1. I play queen d7. Here he goes rook c4. And now I play this move bishop g7. Now this move is not necessary per se, but the reason I play this move is that potentially I want to go for something like bishop to h6 and maybe knight e3. Additionally, it now gives me a square for my king on h8. And third and last but not least, if white plays rook c1, for example, there is the immediate bishop h6, causing white all kinds of problems. So it's a bit of a waiting move, but it also makes white have to play something. And here Ray goes knight c2. Now I play the move b5, Ray takes, I take back, and at this point, now white is in serious trouble. The b file's open, I can go rook b8, I can go knight d4, knight f4, and it's very clear here that Ray will lose the game. So Ray plays knight a1. Now I play knight to d4 here, jumping to the center with the knight, forking the pawns of the queen. Ray plays queen a2. Not takes, by the way, because after takes, let's just say white goes, I don't know, rook e1. Not rook e1, sorry. Let's just say white goes queen d2. There's knight e3, which is winning, but even knight c3 here with the bishop and the pawn on this diagonal and the open e and f files combined with the threats on the b file as well mean that white will lose in short order. So Ray goes queen a2. Now I play the move rook to b8, targeting the pawn on b3, and here he plays the move queen a4. Now I end up playing this move queen b7 after a bit of a think, and the reason I play this move is not so much that the endgame isn't winning. For example, I could obviously trade off all the pieces here and simply play this position with an extra pawn on the a file, but if I do this, now Ray will be able to play a lot of moves very quickly, and even though it's probably technically lost, the game doesn't end immediately, whereas when I play the move queen b7, I keep all the pieces on the board, I'm still attacking on the queen side, there are all kinds of forks in play, and now Ray plays the move bishop takes knight. Here I take back, and we get the blunder with queen c6. Now, white is already in all kinds of trouble here. I've got the fork on e3. I also, of course, have a fork on b6 as well, and it's just very, very hard to play. Probably rook c5 is the best move, but even here, knight to c3, takes would be good enough because of all these serious weaknesses that white has in this position, and I should win the game. So Ray goes queen c6. Now I play knight to e3. The knight is forking the towers. I'm going to win one of the rooks, and the game ends very shortly. We get queen e6. I block. We get the trade, and now Ray plays rook f2 here. If he moves the rook to c1, I simply take and then win the pawn on f3 and the game. So we get rook f2. I take the rook on c4, Ray takes, and now I play the move d3, opening up the long scope for the bishop on g7. Ray plays c5, and now I go for a4. Ray plays rook a2. I take on f3, and here he resigns the game simply because I'm crashing through on the f file. I'm up a rook for a knight, and in any endgame here, white will lose. If white were to take on a4, I go check, king a2, and then rook takes a1 would simply be a checkmate. If white plays knight d2, trying to stop rook f1 and attacking the rook, I can simply go rook to e3 with the idea of rook to e1 anyway, and white will get checkmated in the next couple of turns. So after rook takes f3, Ray Robson resigns this game. I get a really big win in the first game of the day to move to 5.5 points out of 7. Now, Fabiano would draw in the first round of the day against Lenier Dominguez, meaning going into round 8, we would be tied on 5.5 points out of 7. So we're tied for the lead on 5.5 points out of 7. I think it's 5. Yeah, we're tied on the score. Sorry, I'm doing this recap live, so I'm trying to remember the score. So we're tied on 5.5 points out of 7. Now in round 8, I would play the white piece against Gregorio Parin, and we would play a massively long game, something like 150 moves. I would be unable to break through. The game would end in a draw. And in Fabiano's game, he would actually be completely lost against Garry Kasparov, but Gary would make a horrible blunder with little time on the clock and go on to lose. So that means going to the final round, Fabiano is on 6.5 points out of 8. I'm on 6 out of 8, and let's take a look at the last round game. So in the last round game, I have black once again against Samuel Shankland. I need to win and hope that Fabiano draws or loses against Ray Robson in order to tie for first and or win the tournament. So black against Shankland, and the game starts with f4. I play f5. We get g3 and g6. Now, one thing about some of the openings that we played in this tournament, this was the second opening where all the games were the exact same through the first 2 moves with f4, f5, g3, g6. Now, Shankland decides to play the move knight d c3. In the other games, I think e4 was the main move that was played here, but Shankland goes for this maneuver knight c3. Now, this move took me by surprise because when I was looking at this before the game with Garry Kasparov, we both thought you should move the b knight here so this knight on d1 can go to f2 or e3, whereas after knight c3, now white is going to have to push the pawn to develop this knight to d2 here, or white will have to go for knight a3, putting the knight on the rim. So after knight c3, I play the move e5 here. Sam takes, and here I make a bit of a mistake when I take with the queen on e5. Now again, this is Fischer random chess, so blunders happen, but it's remarkable to see how at this point the position is considered equal, but as soon as I go e5 here, I'm much worse after 3 moves. Like, who can blunder on move 2 or move 3 in this game? But it does happen, and that's actually why I think a lot of people do enjoy watching Fischer random chess, because you see that the top players, they're all about memorization. They don't actually have talent for this game. They just memorize lines. Their intuition is very, very bad. So we get takes. Here I take with the queen. Probably I should have taken with the bishop, because after d4, bishop g7, if white goes knight a3, similar to the game, here I have the move bishop to h6, harassing the king on c1. So instead I take with a queen, get d4, queen e7, and now Sam plays knight a3. Now at this point I spent a lot of time, nearly 8 minutes before playing this wild move, pawn to a5. Now honestly, I was unhappy with the position. Originally I wanted to play queen g5 check going into an endgame here, but I figured first of all, I can't ever really win this endgame after d5, knight e5, and e4, so I can't win the game, which means that I can't catch Fabiano, first of all. And then secondly, this isn't really very creative either. So I spent a lot of time looking at other lines. I become more and more unhappy. I couldn't figure out what I want to do since I wasn't going to trade the queens. And ultimately, I play this crazy move, pawn to a5. Now, the inspiration behind this move is that after Sam castles, I play this move rook to a6, going for the classic meme of lift your rooks, bruh. And I want to swing my rook over to e6 or f6. Now, this is obviously not particularly good, but it's actually quite tricky here because if white ever plays e4, let's just say I take and we got some position like this, I can trade the rooks on f1 and maybe go rook f6, let's just say queen g2 for example, something like c6, and with the rook on the f file or maybe going to the e file, maybe I can be okay, although it's funny that even here computer is laughing at me and saying that black is completely lost. So we get e4. I take, Sam trades the rooks, goes knight e4 here. Now he's hoping to jump to c5 or b5 with D's knights, and already I'm in serious danger and might lose the game. Now here I play the move bishop d5, which is a mistake. I actually consider the best computer move, which was rook to b6, trying to use the b's on the diagonals and the rook on the open b file. But frankly, in a blitz/rapid game here, it's very, very hard to play this. And I end up playing the move bishop d5, trying to pin the knight on e4 so that if white moves the knight, I win the bishop on h1 and I win the game. So Sam goes knight b5 here, and now I have to be extremely careful to not lose on the spot. There's a very nasty tactic which exists, which is one of the moves that I wanted to play here, something like bishop to g7, for example, but now white can go knight e d6, checking the king, and if I take with the pawn after bishop d5, I'm simply much worse. White has a 2b's. I've got these double stacked pawns. There's even a bastion looming with the knight on b5, and it's all but hopeless. And if I take here with the rook, intending to sack the rook, with knight takes rook and queen takes, winning the game, white has the move knight to a7, and we get a very unusual smothered checkmate, where if the knight's in the way, the king can't move, and the game ends immediately. So, very, very dangerous here, and ultimately I end up playing the move bishop takes knight, Sam takes, and now I go for the move c6. Now at this point, my hope here is just to survive. I expected Sam to play knight c3, and I was going to go a4, a3, d5, bishop d3, and then something like b5 with the idea of lifting the rook to a7 and f7 or e7. As you can tell from the evaluation bar, this is very bad, but at least I'm not losing on the spot. Sam, however, who's been having a rough tournament, both in the US Championship but even in this 9LX event, he ends up making a huge blunder here when he plays the move queen to f1. Sam simply missed my next move in the position. He thought that I would trade the queens, because if white takes, you lose the horse and the game. But after takes, there's knight d6 check, king c7, knight e8, king c8. After rook takes f1 with the idea of going rook f8 and creating the kebab on the back rank, black is simply getting crushed. However, after queen to f1, I have this move queen to h6, checking the king here, and now white is going to lose the knight on b5. I'm going to have an extra horse, and now the game is mine for the taking. So Sam plays king b1. I take the horse, he takes back, and now I play this move queen to h5. Very pragmatic decision here, trying to trade the queens or win the rook on d1. Sam plays queen c4, and now I play the move rook c6. What I'm hoping for, of course, is that white will take the rook, because then I can take the rook on d1, and we have our classic ice skater checkmate here. King is stuck on the back rank. So Sam plays queen d3, and here I make a huge mistake with this move rook to e6. Now this really shows A, how tired we were at the end of the tournament, but B, how tricky Fischer Random can be, because this is an epic fail by me, and Sam misses a golden opportunity. Now the move he plays is rook to f1 here. He probably thought, well, if I go a3, black will sack the rook, and after takes, king a2, queen g1, black simply has 3 extra pieces, and the game will end very soon. But after rook to e6, Sam could have played this move bishop to f3, attacking the queen. I was going to go queen f5, and now white has this unbelievable move d5 here. And the reason that white is completely fine is that if I move the rook away, now white can play queen c4, and my king has no squares. The knights are in the way. These clumsy horses, these knights are blocking it, so I will have to sack one of the knights. And now in this position, after say takes and bishop g4, with the weak king on c8, the 2 b's here, very, very active, black is going to lose the game. So then you're probably thinking, well, after d5, just trade the queens, right? Because if rook takes queen, you have rook e1 check, and you're going to win in this endgame. But no, white can take with the pawn here, doubling the pawns on the file. And here I have the exact same problem as before, where when I move the rook, white goes check, and these stupid knights, they're in the way. I have to sack one of my knights. In this position, I'm actually not losing because we're in an endgame with queens off the board, but white is still a little bit better. Instead, Sam plays rook to f1, and now I go for the move knight c6, and here we got the move c3. Now you're probably thinking, why not d5? Again, fork the knight and the rook, but here I can go for queen to e5, creating the classic double-A battery, threatening the checkmate on b2, and now after white plays a move like bishop d4, I can simply take on e4, white will probably take, and after queen takes, d4 takes, and let's just say king c7 here. I have 2 knights and a bishop in return for the rook, and I will win. So after knight c6, Sam plays c3 here, hoping to play d5 as this diagonal is now shut, but here I go for the move rook f6. We get rook to e1, and here I play d5, trying to stop white from pushing the pawn, but more importantly, closing down the center and keeping this bishop on g1 on a closed diagonal. Sam plays bishop g2. I go knight to e6 here. Another very important move, because the one big issue I have is this very weak pawn on d5. So I go knight e6, we get a4, and now I play knight c7, and these knights now cover the e7 and e8 squares for the rook. Rook can't enter, and it also guards the pawn on d5 as well. And at this point, it's simply a matter of maneuvering my piece into position in order to win the game. So Sam plays king a2, I go queen to f5, we get queen d1, and now I play queen d7. Sam goes bishop e3, trying to use the 2 Bs on these diagonals, and here I play this move, bishop to g7. We got bishop f4, and now I go bishop f8, trying to slam the door on the diagonal to blunt the force of the Stark square B. Sam plays queen b3, I go bishop d6, he goes bishop e3, and now I play the move queen to f7, over protecting this pawn on d5 from being captured. Sam plays rook e2, I go king b8 here, important move because I always want to move the rook somewhere, but if I go to f5 right away, there's still bishop to h3, pinning the rook on f5. So I go king b8, we got bishop g5, rook f5, bishop c1, and now I play the move h5. Now at this point, I've consolidated my position, all my pieces are very well placed, and it's simply a matter of eventually trading down some pieces, and with the limited material, I will go on to win. So Sam plays queen c2. I play g5, we get queen d3, and here I go g4, trying to lock this bishop on g2 at home here. Now the pawns prevent the bishop from using any diagonals, pawn on d5 is guarded, and white is just lost. Sam plays h3, I go rook to f2, following my plan of trading down the heavy pieces, the rooks and the queens. Sam takes, I take back, he goes bishop e3, and here I play the move queen to f5. Now, it's a very important move here because if I trade the rooks on e2 and play a move like queen to f5, white is still losing after bishop f2, but white guards the pawn on d5 is a little bit weak here, and the game goes on. Whereas when I play queen to f5 here, offering the trade of the queens, if white moves the queen away, now I trade and take on g3 because the queen on f5 guards the pawn on g4. I won't lose this pawn, I'll push it down the board, and here I'm simply up a piece for nothing. White doesn't even have one pawn in return for the knight anymore. So after queen f5, Sam could have traded as well, but even this one with takes and bishop f2, I'll eventually go on to win. Probably knight e7 here just to illustrate the point, and eventually I can go knight to f5, the knight on c7 guards the pawn, and now I will win the pawn on g3, and again, this will simply be a matter of technique before I get the dub. So after queen f5, Sam resigns this game, and with that win, I move to a score of 7 points out of 9. Now, unfortunately for me, Fabiano would continue to win. He would win his final round game against Ray Robson. The position was probably drawn at some critical moment, but Fabiano would go on to win. So unfortunately, even though I have a great result with 7 points out of 9, I finish a half point out of first place, but it's still second place by 1.5 points. Fabiano and I were clearly the class of this tournament. It seemed like we simply put it together when it mattered the most. So overall, I'm very happy with the result. Maybe a touch disappointed that I didn't win since I did put up such a massive score. But at the end of the day, I played pretty well. And honestly, when I look at the Fisher random events that have happened here in St. Louis, in almost every single one of them, I've gotten off to a bad start in the first 2 or 3 rounds. I've had some kind of disaster strike, and I've never really been able to recover. And I've never even been in the running to win the event. So overall, I'm very, very pleased. Mildly disappointed that I didn't actually win, but I put together a good performance. I played very well overall, and I'm pretty happy with the result. So, good result. I finished in second place in the Chess 9LX event here in St. Louis, Missouri, and we move forward to the next event. So, on that note, that is going to be it for right now. I hope you guys have enjoyed the recaps I've done of the Fisher Random Chess 9LX event being held here in St. Louis, Missouri. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, make sure that you smash that subscribe button below, and we'll be back with some more recaps as Levy continues his match in Stockholm, and I get back to my regular streaming days. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Have a great rest of your evening, and I'll see you very soon. Bye!